I first learned about your organization because of the Beyond K Lifestyle 2021 event that you had, but I didn't realize you'd been around since the early 1960s doing big things. In other words,
Yes.
your organization has been doing big things, but kind of in a quiet way. So was
Right.
this one of your first big events in the New York, New Jersey area at Beyond K Lifestyle 2021?
Well, actually, this isn't one of our first. We've been doing this every year. It's a little different. So every year we plan something new and we try to do something different and just to improve what we have been doing. It's not one of our biggest, but it is one of the bigger ones that we do host throughout the year.
And you had over 50 vendors. Who were some of those vendors that participated in this year's event?
So I'm sure you know LG. They were very kind to participate with us. We had Clio, which is one of the bigger Korean companies, Able CNC, which goes by the brand name Misha. Those are one of the bigger K-beauty companies. We had Taesang, which is a food distributor here, one of the bigger Korean distributors. So we had a lot of these companies, and we were very thankful that these companies trusted us and to participate. So we had around 53 companies in total, and in total we had about 70 brands that was present at our event.
Wow, so it sounds like a 2022 event is likely to happen. I'm not asking for dates, but yes?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. To chime in, it was like 57 different companies, but from the big companies to the small enterprises. So it was kind of a festival for South Korea and all the K lifestyle companies.
Great. Well, I've always loved Korean food. I've always been aware of Korean music and film, but to me, it didn't become the mainstream form of entertainment until maybe about 5 years ago. I think when some of the boy bands like BTS, who I had the pleasure of interviewing a couple of years ago, when they started rising and playing arenas, that helped it. But then yesterday, one of the biggest news stories in the country was Squid Game season 2. That was picked up. When did you first start to notice that it wasn't going to be as hard to promote Korean culture in the US because it was bringing its own magic?
I think, like you said, with BTS rising, a lot of people started to get interest in Korean products and Korean trends, Korean dramas, Korean movies. And not only BTS, but with a lot of our movies that were, I think, Train to Busan, or I forget the name of one of the movies, but a lot of Netflix shows have been picking up on Korean originals as well. And I think that way it did help. But very luckily, I think with the hype of Squid Games, our event just worked out really well, because right now everybody's crazy over Squid Games. And we did have some of the items that kind of portrays the Netflix show. So we had dalgona making kits, those candy making kits that we were giving out as samples. And we were also playing some of the games that was in the show at our event. So a lot of people it was an eye-catching experience for a lot of foreigners that weren't used to the Korean culture. And overall, I think for us, every year, the rise with Korean culture and Korean shows, it's been somewhat easier for us to promote. So as the years get by, it's easier, but it's easy and hard at the same time, because I think people are only focused on one specific thing when they look at Korea, especially these days, Squid Game or BTS. So it's not all the Korean products that gets an eye on it. And I think that's why we kind of did this lifestyle event where it didn't focus on one specific industry, but we had K food, we had K beauty, and K lifestyle. So we kind of meshed everything up so that they, not only when US customers come, they're not looking at one industry, but they're able to look at an overall view of Korea.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think everything is, sorry, go ahead.
No, as you just made the excellent point, it's not just that it's all entertainment, it's food, it's beauty, it's industry, it's technology, it's different brands that you mentioned at the beginning, LG and Samsung, etc. It's one of those things where the average person, I don't think, connects all the dots to immediately realize, hey, all this comes from Korea. But as you were saying,
yeah, actually, I think everything is connected. I mean, from culture, I can learn the country and the background of country itself. And from starting it, I can experience other goods or products. For example, in my case, I started to like American, US artists. And then I started to get interested in all of the other products in US, made in US. So everything is like this. So starting from culture and is spreading out to other Korean goods or Korean companies as well. So from that part, I think this event was very good event for all the Korean companies and US consumers too.
Now, as a person who grew up in New York, I know that 32nd Street in Manhattan, they call K-Town. I know that there's a tremendous Korean population of Fort Lee, New Jersey, right outside of New York City. Where are some of the other US markets where there's a lot of Korean industry or population?
Well, I think a lot in other than this Eastern region, I think California obviously has a much bigger Asian market than New York and New Jersey combined. There's a lot of Korean communities in Atlanta these days. I think Texas is also a big hub of Korean communities. So we're getting there. We're everywhere, but those are the larger ones I can think of. And Washington, D.C., obviously.
Very interesting. Do you think that's because of corporations being based there and families coming over, or is it just luck that the population is growing everywhere around the United States?
I think it's both. I think a lot of the Korean, not only the Korean companies are in those regions, I think it's also the area itself. I think that's what attracts Korean people to move. It could be the education system. It could be just the neighborhood. So I think it's just all of those combined. And once there are a couple of Koreans, words get out very fast. So people move to the same area.
Yes, and we talked about at the beginning the Beyond K Lifestyle 2021 event being a success, that there'll probably be a 2022 event. What else is coming up for the organization that you're allowed to talk about? Projects that you're working on, partnerships. Tell me more, please.
First, these days, due to COVID-19, there will be a big one-on-one meeting event in December, hosted by KOTRA headquarters office. So actually, in this event, South Korean companies cannot come to US or easily come to US, or US companies cannot easily go to South Korea. So KOTRA has been hosting a very big one-on-one event through online. So a lot of South Korean companies who have good quality products. So yeah, South Korean companies and US companies can meet in Zoom or other Microsoft Teams as well.
So just going off of that, besides from K Lifestyle, so I guess to give a little bit background of our organization. So we are a government agency from South Korea. And so mainly our task is to help Korean small startups and small, medium-sized enterprise companies to come abroad. So we have 136 offices all around the world. So it's not just the US market, it's literally all over the world. It depends on which office we are in at. So we focus more on the New York and New Jersey and this like Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, this region. And we attend a lot of events hosted at Javits Center, for example. If there is a big trade show, we would have a Korean pavilion. So we would invite 10 to 20,
23.
23 to 30 companies to come, and we would help them with the whole setup. So we're actually going to be at the dental exhibition that will be happening this month. Besides from that, we have other departments that will be hosting investor, like Jong-Young mentioned, investor 101 meetings virtually. Next year, we will have this, hopefully we will have K Lifestyle. We have a department that helps with Korean students get jobs in the US. So we will have a career fair this year as well, maybe at one of the hotels in Manhattan. So it's just a variety of things that we are hosting. It's kind of hard to pinpoint on which one to talk about specifically, but that's somewhat our plan until the end of the year.
You're staying busy. Well,
yes,
definitely.
definitely.
The question is, the name Squid Game has already come up, and that's the show that within 2 weeks of posting, something like 150 million people had already watched, and it's growing, and we saw a lot of Halloween costumes. But what's another TV show streaming that we can get here? We everyday people in New York and New Jersey and California, what's a second TV show that you could recommend that is definitely approved by your organization?
That's a very difficult question.
And feel free to name a few that we should check out. Not playing favorites, but if we are to learn that, hey, there's this great industry and there's great television and streaming content regularly we can put out, what should we watch?
I personally would recommend, I think on Netflix, there is a show called Reply. Reply. I'm not sure what it translates to. I could check.
It's a kind of retro series. I mean, the background is like 1998 or 1994. So, like my mother and father lived that era. So, yeah. So you guys can see how South Korean people lived and how they live with the culture and that deal with the system. So everything is kind of brand new. And the more important thing is that in the game in Squid Game, the older games were played in 1990s or 1980s. Like blue light, green light. This thing was played on 1990s or 1980s even. Yeah. So you can see, that kind of things in a Reply series.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that show. I think, especially with Squid Game, the reason why it was so popular was because of the culture that we portrayed at the show. I mean, yes, it was a very competitive game, and it's something that I'm not sure I wouldn't play personally, but yeah, personally, I would not play risking my life. But I think the games that they played, like Jong-Young mentioned, those are the games that our parents or our grandparents used to play. So for us, it's normal to look at those games. But then for non-Korean people to view, it's all new. It's all new. And everyone, when we were playing those type of games at our K Lifestyle event, they actually passed us and said, wow, that's a thing, is what they said. So for us, it's a normal culture, but for foreigners, it's not. So that's why the TV show Reply, like 1988, I think those would be fun to watch to see kind of what culture that Korea people used to have. Not the 2021 Korea, but what happened in the 1900s or the 1800s. So that's why personally, I would recommend everyone to watch.
Thank you very much for your time. Very interesting stuff to come. And I'm looking forward to seeing what's next from your great organization, which is clearly making an impact on a global level.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you for having us, and thank you for your time and asking us various questions. It was fun for us to answer as well.
Paltrow.